Okay, here we are with Mona in Egypt, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the,
Hello.
yes, I'm so excited to welcome you to the Global Walkability Correspondence Network representing Egypt. We've been talking for a bit, and I love what you've been sharing about Egypt and walkability and your idea about the holistic lifestyle it offers and offering walkability in small bites in a
Right.
society that, like many others, is becoming more and more car centric. So yeah, if you have anything to share, I'd love to hear.
Well, I absolutely adore the fact that I'm here. I'm absolutely humbled. Thank you so much for reaching out. And yeah, with Egypt in particular, I think what's very important that a lot of people miss is that there's a lot of heritage embedded in the streets. And a lot of the time we don't get to experience that because you're locked up in, a tuna can of a car, and you're stuck in traffic. And when you're on your feet, when you're experiencing these things firsthand and independently, it kind of adds to you as an individual, it adds to you as a person. And it's not only just about the holistic lifestyle of the independent individual, but it's also the fact that you almost owe it to your environment to produce this kind of lifestyle for it, right? It's not all about convenience, but rather it's about efficacy, it's about effectiveness, it's about a lot of these things that kind of go under the radar because of technological advancement. And I'll say it straight up, I love technology. I am an absolute fiend. I love my phone. However, there are certain things that need to be taken into account when we're looking at the longevity of these strategies and these lifestyles. And the truth of the matter is, living in cars is a scarce life. You don't really get to experience much.
Yes, I also love what you say about the heritage that's embedded in the streets. So there's really a case to be made too for walkability and local, urban, and world heritage,
Oh,
which,
100%,
yeah.
100%. I feel like a lot of the time, especially in Egypt, or perhaps it's my experience that in Egypt and my experience in the Netherlands as well, is that cars tend to take away from that. Roads take away from that. You go from cobbled streets to, really wide asphalt paved roads. You take away, the side street vendors. You take away a lot of the character and the essence and the personality of a street, whether that be through heritage or through the embedded culture in the country. Just adding a road or paving a road straight through takes so much away from it, away from the color, like the kaleidoscopic nature of just walking down a street and seeing all of these different things, experiencing all of these different people. I feel like being in a car does take away from that. And while I do know, it's effective and long distances and whatnot, especially in Egypt, we're a huge country. So unfortunately, it is a necessary evil. But there are small clusters of heritage that you can experience on your feet that you don't need to be in a car for. But unfortunately, our reality is that we are in a car for them. And this goes globally. Like even in some really eco-friendly countries, like I mentioned, like the Netherlands in particular, they're a very green country, very beautiful, very eco-friendly. They're all cyclists, but still, like when you're in a car, like you go to Rotterdam, for example, and it's absolutely, pedestrian friendly, but it's also very, industrial. It's very car centric. It's very large. It doesn't afford you the kind of beauty that would otherwise be present in a country without cars, period. Not that that's a very idealistic kind of statement to make, but yeah, I stand by it, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, Europe does offer so many cases for great walkable urbanism, but people tend to also forget that there's a really high degree of car-centric planning and culture here as well.
Yeah.
About Egypt, really quick, I think, of course, thinking about walkability, to me, thinking about the locals' lifestyle is first and foremost, but also with the heritage, there's a tourism aspect too. And I think
Yeah, of
as
course.
tourists visiting, if I'm coming to your city, I'm guessing a lot of the heritage places you would take me to walkability would be a key feature, or one of the most attractive features of a heritage location?
I think there's like a juxtaposition to be made here because all of the places that you would visit heritage wise like I would necessitate that you take them on your feet, right? And a lot of people do automatically. So you get to actually experience the place. But the actual environment and the context surrounding it is not exactly pedestrian friendly, right? So it's not so like the heritage you have to experience on your feet, but yet the context doesn't really afford you the ability to experience it in the best possible way, which is why I feel like this rhetoric is so important. And why I really love what you're doing here is because I feel like a lot of people tend to exist on their feet, but they're not helped to do so. They're almost forced to do so because you'll park your car somewhere and then you're going to have to walk all the way to wherever you need to be. And it's pedestrianism. I mean, it's textbook pedestrianism. You're walking, but is the state and is the place helping you um, along your journey to being a pedestrian? And that's the important question that I feel like Egypt in specific does not answer because we're really shooting for that, re-infrastructure. We're really, really shooting for the bridges, for the emerald cities, for the yellow brick roads. We're really going for it. But realistically speaking, the only pedestrianism that exists is within gated communities, which is a really unfortunate reality. And everybody that walks within the old city and within Cairo or Alexandria or, Port Said or whatnot, wherever they're walking for necessity. They're not walking for convenience or pleasure. And I feel like it's a shame that pedestrianism has been reduced to a near necessity rather than something that you do for pleasure, something that, yeah, I could take my car, but I could also walk. And I feel like I would enjoy walking a lot more. Um, and I feel like Egypt is really missing that element.
What would you say about the current landscape of walkability advocacy in Egypt?
I think a lot of people are really, really rooting for it because, especially in the past couple of years in specific, I've seen a lot of initiatives come up that are not necessarily like pedestrian oriented, but they're oriented towards, more cycling roads. They're oriented towards, rollerblading and skateboarding and a lot of green means of transportation. I've seen, people give up their cars for Vespas, even though it's not the greatest thing in the world. It's a lot less, of a CO2 hazard. Um, so a lot of the time, I do think that the new generation is a lot more keen to reinvent Egypt in a new light, in a more pedestrian friendly light. But I feel like there's still a long way to go because the old infrastructure still exists. And since Egypt is so large, cars are, like I said, a necessary evil, but I feel like there are ways to mitigate the damage. There are ways to kind of allow the pedestrian to exist without needing their car every single trip.
Okay, and I learned about you. I'm so happy I did because we are now here talking. I learned about you through your article, A Case for Pedestrian Wust El Balad. Am I pronouncing that
Yeah,
correctly? Can
very
you
good.
share can you share a snapshot of what that article is about?
So basically, West El Balad is an area in downtown Cairo that was Khedival in nature. So it was built by Khedive Ismail, and he was a very, very, very Euro-inspired Khedive. Khedive is like a title; it's almost like a caliph or a king of the time. Uh, so West El Balad is basically an amalgamation of a lot of cultures, particularly European inclinations at the time. It was there's a lot of British colonial heritage there. There's a lot of French architecture. There's a lot of Italian inspiration. And it's such a beautiful and delicate location with, the cobbled streets, the alleyways. Like it's very reminiscent of these towns in, like Vienna or Amsterdam. It's quite beautiful, but unfortunately recently with the new boost, sorry, to like develop the infrastructure, there's also been a demand on this location for cars to use it as a shortcut and for, you know, the lack of bridges or whatever that they're developing. But now that we are developing these bridges and these alternate routes, I feel like this is an opportunity to shut this place off and make it a haven for the pedestrian, because it's perfect for it. It's perfect for it. It's the little streets, the little shops, it's the heritage, it's the convenience of everything being around you. It's the essential pedestrian experience, and I feel like it's a shame that we still have cars there when they're not needed. Nobody is going to West al Balad in a car. They're going through West al Balad as a shortcut. And I feel like that is quite a shame.
Wow, that's great. I love how you say it's the essential pedestrian experience and pointing out that nobody who's going there is using a car. It's all the people going through. That's such a key observation. So you're in Cairo.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, let's round off. I don't know if you know we do this, but I do a walkability city rating with people. We rate the city on a you can skip some. We do usually cycling, walking, and public transit. Okay. And you share on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 the lowest, 10 the highest, your scores, and then also share what you believe would need to happen for your score to go up. You know, and these scores are, I say they're conversational scores. So I could talk to you next year and do a scoring and you could say my score has changed, you know, and it's meant to, inspire conversation. You know, you can take this experience to your family, your friends, and hear what their scores would be. So I'll let you decide what you want to start with: walking, public transit, or cycling. And I know Cairo is huge, so you can do an averaging out sort of too, you know, because it's going to be different in different neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. Like the districts are really different. Like you'd have Garden City, peak pedestrian, absolutely love it. Green area, cobbled streets, just exceptional, right? And then you would look at Mohandasin and it's literally something out of like Blade Runner. It's horrible. It's just
that's
absolutely
interesting.
Horrible.
So it goes from like, you could say it goes from like 2 to 9 or something even.
Yeah, like it really does. But if I would have to say, if I would have to, you know, average it out, I would say Cairo's maybe a 6 or a 5.5.
For walkability?
Yeah. Yeah, for walkability. Of course, not taking into like account the confounding variables of, you know, the unfortunate realities of, you know, danger levels, night, day, that kind of thing, of course. This is more taking into account the structure of the area and whether or not it would be a pleasant walk, basically. What else? Cycling. Cycling, I think, is the most promising thing, but I would also give it around a 5, but particularly because cycling is so common here, but it also comes with its own risks because we don't necessarily have cycling lanes, and that kind of goes into what I think should exist in a city as big as Cairo or in specific districts. But it is very common, and I feel like a lot of people do it, especially in the smaller districts like say Zamalek or Garden City. You'll find a lot of bikes. And public transport. I actually don't know with this one because I feel like public transport is poor, but it exists for the majority of the public, right? So if I want to be nitpicky and say, oh no, like that's too crowded for me or that's not quick enough, then I can be nitpicky. But I guess for the majority of the public, which I'm supposedly speaking on the behalf of right now, I would give it maybe a 7 because it is readily available. It is everywhere. You've got metros that are constantly running. You've got the trains. You've got public transport in cabs. You've got buses. They're just everywhere. I don't know about the quality of them though. I don't tend to ride them myself. I'm very much a walk or a car person. But yeah, I would say 7 to be completely, you know, fair and to try and be a little bit impartial to my own biases.
Okay, well, I am so excited to welcome you to this network and to begin learning even more about Cairo through your lens. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.